Well, for some reason it had a problem here. Sorry about that, guys. Said something went wrong, and I had to go back to the front here. But anyway, my channel is Discerning What Is True. My name is Brant, B-R-A-N-T, Hunt, H-U-N-T. My channel, again, like I said, is Discerning What Is True. Today is the 23rd day of November, 2023, and I'm going to be reading from a particular book by Alvin Kukn, K-U-H-N. This is part 2 of his particular book I'm reading. It's called Creation in 6 Days. So, again, this particular guy had I would call effects of Gerald Massey had influence upon him. He was a theosophist, and he was very good at what I call looking at occulted and looking at the Bible in a cultic way, which is the way we're actually supposed to look at it instead of literal interpretation. So let's get into the book here. This is part 2, Creation in 6 Days. The area where I'm starting at is what they call the serpent tempter. It is therefore the body itself that tempts the device of the divine part of man. To sin. Here we face the necessity of making another vital rendering of long lost ancient meaning, at this time connected with the word temptation. Its complete elucidation is reserved for the succeeding numbers in the series, that is, the tree of knowledge. But it can be stated briefly here that this word has been, like so many other carrying pivot meaning, twisted out of its true reference and bent to a crude falsification of its significance. It is, in briefest forms of statements, simply the trial and testing to which life and body subjects all souls. It is not a trap set by divine strategy to catch man in sin. And the fact that the trial of man comes to his soul from the side of the body, we have the explanation of the allegorical features that deplete the temptation as coming to Adam from the woman. Universally, unequivocally, the male figure is in old scripture typifies spirit, and the female one is the matter. Man's soul is represented even as masculine, his body as feminine. The body, that is the woman, tempts the soul, that is man. That is the inescapable and simple meaning back of the temptation of Adam by Eve. Most significant in this connection, the real sin of theological scholarship come to light in a little matter of English translation. In the 20th verse of chapter 3 of Genesis account, it is said that Adam called his wife named Eve because she was the mother of all living. The Greek Septuagint Old Testament lies open under our eyes as this is written, and in the plainest of print it says nothing of the kind. And Adam called the name of his wife Zoe, Z-O-E, as being the mother of all the living. Now, Zoe, of course, means life in the Greek. So Paul, incontrovertibly, correctly, when he says that sin sprang to life when the soul obeyed the divine command to come down to life. Whole volumes of controversy and blind groping for true meaning can be resolved now to clear and simply understand. Adam, the soul and body, plunged into this entirely necessary and wholesome life of sin or fleshly trial as it entered the mortal body, which was the woman whom, as he says to God, thou gavest me. And the whole beautiful truth of the soul relation to body is thus pictured in allegory under the common human representation of man, the soul element, being given the woman type of fleshly body as his companion and helpmeet. And let no theologian mind fail to comprehend that the soul cannot partake of life, can learn little from life, cannot generate its own divine capabilities and faculties. Its sons without the aid of an instrumentalization body, that is the woman. Next section is called And Adam Knew Eve. Then comes like a remarkable statement that has never had anything but the wildest guesses as to its profound sense from 20 centuries of exegesis, and competent readers can judge for themselves as to the epithetical significance of a single determination of this kind in the history of theology. It floods an area of darkness which welcomes light. It is the verb in the opening verse of the 4th chapter of Genesis Now Adam knew Eve, spelled in Greek was spelled E-U-A, parentheses, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain. As assumedly and outside of some miracle or whimsical action of God, sexual cohabitation was necessary for Eve's conception and the birth of a son. The bird new has perforce been accepted as a squeamish, delicate, and polite euphemism for sexual copulation between the first pair. Well, let us be affirmed once again that natural relationship on the earthly body plane, as here suggested, only stands as dramatic depreciation of a far deeper cosmic and evolutionary truth that is meant to be discerned on a higher plane of esoteric reverence. Always a outer dramatic fact or phenomenon becomes to the discerning intuition the type of analog of a hidden and reconciled truth. What is adumbrated here then is the great cosmic fact that for the generation of life anywhere it is necessary that the two poles of being, which is the first verse of Genesis, were segregated apart into the duality of spirit and matter, heaven and earth, must affect a union or a conjunction of their two opposite potentialities, and out of the natural intercourse between them generate the progenesis that can proceed only from such a union. In this case of man, the final union of the two will give birth to the Christ child of divine consciousness. You see, this glorious birth of deified mind in man will be the outcome of the at-one-ment, that is, atonement, at-one-ment of the two natures struggling over long periods to achieve a final amity in the breast of the human. The Hindus call this consummation yoga or union. The picture of Adam and Zoe in physical conjunction to generate their children is the dramatic typing of spirit and matter, soul and flesh, in incarnational conjunction to give birth to a new creation of spiritual mind in the creative, that is the creature named man. Again, the sages use a natural and physiological fact to sublimate the thought to a profounder mystical meaning, but 18 centuries of dogmatic folly crushed out the possibility of discerning this deeper import. It has spelled horrendous tragedy for ages. But it will be asked, how does this touch the little verb new? This is an ancient mystery of such cryptical linkage that its subtle clue would never have been regained if Egypt's treasure house of secret wisdom had not been unlocked. It is here revealed for the first time. Perhaps everybody has wondered at one time or another why a group of words in English have the combination of KN and GN with the K and the G silent. In such words as kneel, night, knuckle, knoll, knack, gnostic, nard, knot, knit, gnawed, and many more. The wonder should have extended as well to the reverse combination where the N precedes the K or G. This is seen in such words as anchor, angel, ankle, ink, link, cling, linger, king, messenger, clang, and many more. No dictionary has gone back far enough to locate the true origin of these formations, but a mountain of evidence that has escaped philologists exists to substantiate the claim here advanced that these arrangements of letters derived in the distant past from Egypt's oldest and most majestic symbol, the hieroglyph for life itself. This was the Ankh, A-N-K-H, or Crux Ansata, A-N-S-A-T-A, the antecedential cross it is. It was carried in the hands of all the gods. Their fingers run through the circular loop above the tau, T that is. Its pronunciation equivalent was expressed by the English spelling of Ankh, A-N-K-H, recently changed by the grammarians to Ankh, E-N-K-H, ink. This symbol entails a whole sermon in itself, for it means basically three things. The most significant thing in man's world, namely life, love, and tie. To litigate the relation of these three under one meaning demands considerable elaboration. They together comprise a sacred glyph, or hieroglyph, or transcendent pictograph of great truth. Why would one hieroglyph cover the combined meaning of life, love, and tie? Briefly as can be put, it does so for the reason that there can be no life until two opposite forces are tied together in creative relationship by a power sufficient to hold them in conjunction, which power everywhere in life as attraction denominated by the representative term love. The two opposite forces are, of course, spirit and matter, or soul and body. And all life is generated only when they are conjoined in connubial relation in an organic body such as man's and held together by the divine energy of an affinity that is well symbolized by the word love. The circle above the T cross is universally the feminine or matter symbol, matter having no beginning or end and giving birth to all things, while the straight line or vertical shaft of the T is ever the symbol of male or spiritual potency. That is, this is. See, I'm trying to think. The whole issue, even with the symbol of the phallus, is part of the male. You see, the horizontal line both separates and unites them, and it stands on the borderline between them. The ankh then represents the tying together of soul and body, and life results from this union, which is sustained by the mutual love of the two. The outer analog shadowing this high truth is, to be sure, the love that draws together male and female in conjugal union to beget a new cycle of life. With this background, we can see why know, K-N-O-W, is spelled with the ancient N-K, having reversed to K-N. It was employed in both arrangements and the order makes no difference. Only through this ancient etymology do we arrive at the basic significance that is illuminating for epistemology of the function of knowing. For it is revealed in this light at the mental act which unites, that is, ties, consciousness, the knowing power, with the object of consciousness, the living known, by a power of mind which links the two. Knowledge is constituted only by the tying of mind to an object to be known. Knowledge arises from the love union of subjective consciousness with objective reality. The Ankh cross typified this cosmic marriage that is the basis of all life. Adam, knowing his wife, who was to become the mother of all life, was the dramatic typology to represent the linking together in the human organism of the two elements, the man, or knowing, thinking principle, and woman, the matter or body principle, and the impregnation of the latter by the former, for the new production of all life. The result was that matter conceived and bore her son, that is, spiritual mind. Etymology again sheds much light into dark regions of exegesis. It is interesting to note that both the English conceive, C-O-N-C-E-I-V-E, and the Greek equivalent for it in the Septuagint version is salambano. I'll spell that for you. S-U-L-L-A-M-B-A-N-O, means to take together, to unite or tie together. Conception physically is always the union of male sperm with female ovum. Exoterically, it is the story of the first man and the first woman uniting physically to beget their progeny. And as such, it has ever been taken as a recital of the beginning of the progeneration of the race of mankind. But esoterically, it reveals is more plausible, more acceptable, and more enlightened rapport, and more capable intelligence, both needs and demands to profounder, more abstruse sense, for the deepest mind of man must be fed equally with his body. and his emotions. It would be well if mystical and emotional religionists would remember this. The rational element in man cannot be ignored or starved. But the soul is a compound of thinking and lofty feeling, and both ingredients must be present to ensure interharmony. Irrational pietism has been anything but an unmixed blessing in human history. It has activated much of the foulest inhumanity of man to man recorded in human annals. The next section is called the mist and the dust. Several items in the Bible's second chapter are worthy of special analysis. A apparently mistranslation in verse 6 of this chapter has led to some confusion. It is stated that there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. The Greek word render mist is pege, P-E-G-E, and the dictionary meaning of this is given as spring or source spring, headwaters, fountainhead. Obviously, is a reference to the generation of the moist element, water. Its segregation from the fire or dry element out of the bosom of primordial first matter. Fire and water are the symbols universally employed to represent spirit and matter. Without water, the dry land could produce no life. The rising of the mist out of the primordial chaos denotes the original production of water from out of the inchoated mass in the evolutionary process which segregated earth, water, air, and fire severely into their distinct nature and positions in the universe. As likewise, water is the universal symbol for matter itself. The rising of the mist could not inevitably symbolize the general formation of matter as atomic substance, gradually arising and spreading everywhere in the course of visual creation. For more significant, far more significant is the statement in verse 7 of this chapter, which traces the very creation of man from the dust of the ground. This dust of the ground must be seen as another apparently wild and free translation of the Hebrew text. The common version has it phrased that God formed man of the dust of the ground. It's amazing that scholars and the clergy have not pointed out or been struck by this identity of the two words in Hebrew, the one denoting man and the other rendering what we call dust of the ground. The word for man is no less than the word Adam itself, with the article, the prefix ha, ha, dash Adam in Hebrew, while astonishingly the word for dust of the ground is the same word, thrown into the feminine gender by the addition of the regular feminine singular ending ah. It is anama. Now it is ha Adam is man. It's more than possible to read into ha Adamah as at least one sense of the meaning of woman. Indeed, it entirely harmonized with the esoteric meaning of the whole story to say that God formed man from woman. You see, for man, as we have seen, is the thinking principle, soul or spirit, and woman is the symbol of glip for matter. And certainly it is matter that gives birth to or forms man in this sense. Matter generates cosmic consciousness from out of its interior womb. Either the original translators were ignorant of the symbolism of woman for nature, matter, earth, and body, and mistakenly substitute dust for Adam, or they knew the Adamah, or they knew the deeper meaning and deliberately disguised it, which is what we are told by Plato and Plutarch and other ancient philosophers they did do. At any rate, the only logical connection between the feminine counterpart of Ha, Adam, the thinking man, and dust of the ground is the idea that links the feminine element with material substance, from which, of course, the earth, being ground, and all concrete things are formed. The conception that must truly goes with the Adamah is just that of atomic matter. God evolved the thinking principle out of atomic matter, which must be the rock bottom meaning of the statement, by dust of the ground. Then we are to understand atoms of matter, poetically translated as dust. It can be seen, however, that it would not have been a gross mistranslation had it been made to read that God made the man out of atomic dust. If we can polarize atoms as dust, We will miss the entire sense of the story if we fail to realize that the words Adam and man, and as here used, cannot possibly refer to a single human being. Wow. Folly has ridden along with the idea that Genesis is talking of the formation of the two first human persons. The man of Genesis is humanity. Man, generically, that is. Generically, Adam is the man collectively, not a man. So it's looking at general overall perspective, not a single man at all. Next section is called the four-branch stream of life. Then in verse 10 of chapter 2, there is a division of the river that went out of Eden to water the garden into four parts of heads, with the four names Pison, Gilhon, Hadekel, and Euphrates. Again, theological futility, attempting to make something factual geographically out of this, especially since the name of one of the four streams is known river on earth as Euphrates, has floundered helplessly over one of the simpler features of early esoteric embolism. The great river that proceeded out of Eden to make Verdun to the garden was not a river of earthly water. It was the typical representation of the stream of consciousness cosmic energization of creative power that under the impulsation of God's will went forth to organize matter into bodies, instrumental for the expression of life's ordained purpose. The bloodstream is our bodies, projected from the heart to water all the gardens of man's organic being, is a apt analog of it. The outflowing sap of a tree is another. The dividing and subdividing branches of the stream carry the river of vivification to every portion of the cosmos. But its division in the creation of physical universe is, and animal life on them is always basically a quadroparticle one. The physical base of life construction is by dialectic necessary fourfold. So the universe, so to say, must rest on four square base. This is not, of course, to be taken in crude literal sense, but a four square object is nevertheless the type of a solid base for the world of life in a higher sense. Evolution constructs one of the seven ultimate forms and expression with each of its seven propulsions of energy waves outward from center. The first four build up the base of the pyramid of life, and the last three add the superstructure of a triple consciousness. Mind and soul must rest on a physical base, which is ever four square. At last can be seen what the figure of the altar connotes in the Old Testament. Take a drink here. Again, Bill would say simply squaring the circle, so to speak here. The shape of the great pyramids of Egypt, Mexico, and Yucatan exemplified this basic architecture of the microcosm and the macrocosm. Their four-sided base and upper triangular faces gives us the mathematic formula for the edifice of life. The universe, says as Pythagoras, is built on number. God geometricalizes, that is, 4 plus 3 makes 7 pi. Pattern of life on its physical side. 4 times 3 equals 12, which structuralizes the pattern of the spiritual nature and evolution of man. For the great number 12, as of the months, the hours, the zodiac, and the companions or disciples of Christos in all religions, is represented always as those 12 divine powers of consciousness that man is destined to unfold in his ongoing to Godhead, or Godhood, I should say. And the 12 divine powers will be brought to full function within the course of the unfoldment of the 7 physical properties. The pyramid is thus the mighty glyph and stone of nature, and organic evolution of the creation man, the Son of God. The word itself shows this. For pi, P-Y-R, is the ancient Chaldo-Egyptian word for fire, and mid is the altered form of met, as in the Latin meter, to measure. As life builds her structure, it allots to each formation its due portion of its elementary fire of creative energy. And so the plan is march off the 7 and the 12 measures of the creative fire that builds the house of life. Wisdom, as says Proverbs, built her house with its 7 pillars, and she crowns the base with the great circle of the 12 upright stones, such as Joshua's was ordered to set up in the dry bed of the Jordan River when he led Israelites into the promised land of Canaan, and as the Druids erected in their sun temple at Stonehenge, and as all the nations represented in the 12 house of zodiac, not to mention the 12 Urim that's Urim on the breastplate of the Hebrew high priest, and the 12 sons of Jacob, the foundation of spiritual Israel. Now you see, these numbers are always critical for people to understand. You see, again, remember, these are written in a way what we call myths or stories. So there is no real Adam or Eve, or so to speak, but it's in a way hiding the truth, not hiding the truth, but to keep those from poor minds not seeing the real truth. You see, it's esoteric. You see, it's not literal. Next section, turning to man to find in his microcosm sphere the reduplication of this universe creative structure. We see the basal 4 present as 4 lower vehicles or bodies. There is readily enough apparent first the gross physical body, and less visible, but still readily existent, of an ethical or etherical, I should say, or vital body, or astro or emotional body, and a lower mental body. Rooted esoteric knowledge of the past assures us of these elements in our makeup. Modern psychology is making the same differentiations. These constitute the fourfold base of man's organization. Resting on these and drawing dynamic energy from their atomic springs of power are three more finely atomized bodies, which are vehicles of higher modes of consciousness. A higher or abstract mental body, a Buddha or intuitive type of body, and an animate or soul body. I said animate wrong. It's ATMIC. Thus, we have the lower quaternary and the upper triad as the ancient speaks of them. So you have 4 at the bottom, and you have the 3 at the top. Like as in emanates from the heart of energetic being, shortly divides into 4 heads, which flows out to build the fourfold base of consciousness. The names given to the 4 would unquestionably be found to yield a meaning of physical, vital, emotional, and mental nature, though their etymology origins seem to be lost in obscurity. At any rate, the name Euphrates cannot apply to the river in the Mesopotamian Valley in Egypt geographically. You see how almost everyone they think that's where it's at. They see the literal interpretation as being right there with the Euphrates rivers and the other rivers right there coming together. And they think that is where the Garden of Eden was. So they've looked at it literally, and they've never found that. You see, that's another thing. They've never found anything of that nature whatsoever. They can't find it because it never was there, you see. But this is how the literal, as you know, the simplification of looking at Scripture keeps most people from seeing, you see. It is significant that the garden in which the Lord placed the man was allegorically located eastward in Eden. General theology has not taken heed of the significance of the cardinal points of direction used in ancient scriptural symbolism. East and west are very direct veins of meaning in esoteric philosophy. From its being the place of the rising sun, east was made to carry always the imputations going with the soul's resurrection from its death in incarnation. The point at which it returned from earthly exile to enter the kingdom of spirit, the celestial mansions, and its home of bliss, released from its imprisonment in mortal bodies. Hence, its reference is distinctive to the heaven world, and this brings the allegory into full accord with the statement made earlier herein that the Garden of Paradise was etherical regions, that is, not on earth. So the West, on the contrary, universally speaks of the setting sun, which in turn symbolizes the descent of the soul from spiritual spheres to earthly body. With the Egyptians, the West was Tuat. I think I taught T-U-A-T, the gate to the underworld into which all souls descend or fell in the arcane symbology. Not even to this day has it dawned upon the scholars and savants that this underworld of mythology is the good earth of ours. You see, the soul descends into the underworld when it incarnates in the flesh. How many people really know that, folks? Again, they're looking for a place. They're looking for something physical. Next section is called Male and Female Make He Them. Only with the aid of archaic or arcane symbolism and a particular linguistic link is it possible to probe into the allegory hint at evolutionary process definitely hidden on the outer veil of the story of woman's creation from the rib of the man. Taken an obstinable factual occurrence, the narrative here is preposterous, as is so often the case. The clue to esoteric mystery is found in a single word. Here it is, the word called rib. The truth would not have been so tortuous a matter of discovery if the story had been frank enough to tell us that the part of Adam's anatomy referred to was the mid-rib and not just one of the man's ordinary caustic ribs, C-O-S-T-A-L ribs. Discovery of cryptic meaning was aided by the reflection that in Old English, even in Shakespeare, the word mid-rib is spelled midriff, M-I-D-R-I-F-F. It is therefore from the Old Anglo-Saxon verb, of which we have only the past particle left, riven, R-I-V-E-N, means split or cleft. The original verb to rife, R-I-V-E, has dropped out of use. But lying close to the oldest stem and preserving its meaning is the noun rift, R-I-F-T. And this form of the word leads the mind directly to the fundamental and only rational sense of the entire allegory, you see. The rib allegory is a very subtle cover of allusion to the primitive cleft in the rock, or rift in the unitary being of God in the initial stage of every new cycle of creation. When he breaks his oneness apart into duality of spirit and matter, positive, negative life, male and female, you see, and the operation results in the distinctive separate creation of male and female. It is the biblical occult reference to what is voluminously described in works expounded the arcane science of old as the separation of the sexes. Life is androgyne, or male and female undifferential, before it bifurcates into distinctive male and female. The archaic books tells us that in the early stages of the soul's descent from spiritual realms into the body, its first embodiment were quite tenuous or ethereal, and that in that state both sexual functions were found in the one organism. Only as the soul neared ultimate physical embodiment did it manifest in the full divine forms. In the great book of the dead, the Bible, quotes, of Egypt, it is clearly stated that the soul makes the journey through amento, A-M-E-N-T-A, in the two halves of sex. Amento is this world of life and body, although the scholars have not yet arrived at that vital determination. The sum and gist, G-I-S-T, of the rib allegory is simply the recital, its disguised form of this bifurcation of forking apart of the unity of creative function into the two embodiments of male and female entities. If it is possible that the original allegory form of the story has been altered somewhat by the tampering with and re-editing of ancient manuscripts indulged in rather freely and admittedly by copyists and scribes of the early day, it is to be best understood by thinking of God as running a M-I-D, in parentheses, rib through the center of his unity and thus splitting it into duality, or as dividing that unity by cutting a rift through its middle, as one would cut an apple in two. If one will watch under a microscope, the bifurcation of a We'll see. I'm sorry, I don't know what Paramoecium, paramodium, or any other single cell organism that splits into two equal living entities, and we'll realize that what nature does in the small is a replica or a reduplication of what nature does in cosmic universe. There will be little difficulty understanding that the human race started out as androgynous, separated into male and female. It was affected by means of the opening of the middle line of cleavage or mid-rib, rift or rib between the two halves as they move apart. Any other rendition of the allegory leaves it floating about in the realm of nonsense. The next section is called Origin of the Sense of Shame. This is I want to say something. This is not in his book, but I want to say something here because it just makes me think here. Because this is something that the church does use. They use what I call the three issues. They use shame, they use blame, and they use guilt to make their people and their churches to feel inferior, and that is not supposed to be. It's a way of actually making you be a center. You see, seeing you as a lower person, so to speak. But anyway, the pair is dramatized twice, found themselves naked. The first time it was in the celestial paradise, in which instant is said that they were not ashamed. The second time it was on earth, and although the text does not say specifically that they were this time ashamed, it infers as much by saying that they sewed together fig leaves and made themselves aprons. Here's a touch of allegorism designed to bring out another forgotten item of ancient esoteric knowledge. The inner meaning is involved in an aspect of the soul's history that brings in the matter of its clothing and unclothing itself. So to say, each time it makes the descent from supernaut realms down into flesh. In other words, you see, it reveals its whole self. It unrips, like a zipper, so to speak. And I've lost my thought here. Starting out for Earth from its condition almost pure spirit in the heavens, it successfully interwraps itself in one body after another as it descends from plane to plane. Being the higher triad, it puts on first a lower mental body, then an emotional body, then a vital or pranic body, and finally the gross physical vestiges. Through the friendly offices of these several bodies, it is able to relate itself in conscious experience with the actuality of each plane in turn, and finally all together. But the figure or symbol of nakedness was used by the ancients to hint at his spiritual condition when divested of all three garments in the Imperium. It's not Imperium, Empyrean. Empyrean. And surely the soul has no cause to feel shame of this nakedness, for although divested of all material clothing, it was nevertheless poetically considered in robes of light array, as the Christian hymn has it. It had, as it put off earthly rags, replaced them with the glorious apparel of the redeemed, the divine garments of solar radiance, the body of the resurrection. The allegory could permit no sense of shame to be imputed to that investitude of the soul with the robes of more than royal majesty. So you see how they basically screwed up here. But on the downward way to the flesh, in proportion as to the soul, put on successively heavier and coarser garments of matter. It lost its more resplendent and more real clothing of spirit, and finally stood on earth real of all heavenly raiment. Then it saw itself naked indeed, and its want of the true spiritual clothing brought keenly home to its realization of the relatively debased and degraded condition, a heavenly citizen and son of the divine Father reduced to the state of incarnations in the body of an animal or earth, and forced even to procreate in the low fashion of the beasts. Briefly as this is put, it sums up in a sentence the origins of the human sense of shame of the procreative function and organs. The tree as a symbol stood always for the evolutionary development matter, and the fig was perhaps the foremost of all the symbolic trees. To say that the first pair clothed themselves with fig leaf garments is to allegorize their clothing themselves with the several material and physical bodies which the soul puts on and throws off. exactly as the tree donts and doffs its clothing of leaves each season as it comes to earth. To be divested of earthly clothing in the Father's house was no shame, but to be divested of spiritual radiance, even while clothed in flesh, was the sole shame, you see. You see, we come from spirit. We come from the upper. We come from the spirit world, you see, or as some would say, heaven. And so it was dramatized, although the God soul loses its large part of the memory of the diviner home and kingly origins when it was descended into mortal body. It undoubtedly retains some degree at all times of subconscious sense of the pristine innate divinity, and the impingement upon upon this consciousness of the low estate it has fallen into on earth generates the sense of shame. As it arrives here, though, the agency of the sex functions, this sense of shame naturally centers upon those functions. This is innately and instinctively the repercussions upon its intercognate of its spirits in body, and it requires the later birth of physical philosophical understanding of the whole motive and plan of earthly incarnation and all its beneficence to brain a reflective mind to see that there is no true cause for shame in it. Indeed, it is finally seen that there is no intrinsic shame in it at all time, at any time, because it is understood to be the reflection at its level of that attraction of spirit and matter, of soul and sense, which is the law of life in all the universe. As the first act of Genesis is the separation of life into two aspects of spirit and matter. All later cosmic procedure brings them together in that knowing relation from which all new birth springs. And while the soul blushes a little at her earthly nakedness, she knows in the depths of her secret heart that her union with material body will be blessed and fruitful. So that is the end of the particular book I'm reading. It was that I've shared earlier this week by Mr. Kukn, Alvin Boyd Kukn, I should say. This is called The Story of Creation. Um, so I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that it helps you to see some different things. Um, and Alvin Boyd Kukn is another one who no one knows these two guys I'm treating tonight. No one knows who these people are. No one, as far as I know. Very few people know who these people are. Like I said, Schrollers passed away in '62. I don't know when Mr. Kukn passed away. I had to look it up on Wikipedia. But the point simply is, neither of these guys really got any recognition at such and such. And Kukn he actually wrote his own books by self-published books. In other words, and I think it's the same thing with Schroller. I think, in fact, I believe that both did that in order to make it, so to speak, to get it out there, so to speak. Because I think basically at that time frame, I don't know if they could have found a publisher to actually print these books. I don't. That's just my take on that. I could be wrong. So this is the part two, and this is the ending part of The Creation in 6 Days by Alvin Boyd Kukn. I appreciate you being here. Thank you. And I hope that the readings here will help you to open up your mind to see how we've been fooled by religion in many ways on this planet. It's time for us to grow up, folks, so to speak. So again, thank you again for your attention, and appreciate you being here. And you take care. You have a good night. We'll talk to you soon.